Hello Sumit, you're welcome to another beautiful video tutorial. So in this video, we'll be learning how to make a dartless skirt with a hip allocation method. So we're only drafting it. Here you can see my front and my back pattern that I've already drafted. So now let's get right into how I drafted it. So the first thing I'll be doing on my plain paper is to get my hip height measurement, okay? So you know it ranges from 8 inches to 9 inches. It could be more depending on the height and how big the person you're working with is, okay? So after getting the hip height, I will go ahead and connect with a straight line with my straight ruler. So this line I'm connecting right now, that's where the hip circumference measurement will be resting on, okay? So I'll just go ahead and label my paper. That's the waist. Then this is where the hip measurement will be resting on, which is the second line. So now the next thing I will be doing now is for us to do the calculation that we need to do. So I already have my client's measurement with me that I'm working with. So the first thing I will do now is to take my waist measurement, which is 8.5. I will take our waist measurement, which is 8.5. Then after marking the waist measurement point, we have to do the calculation for the hip part. So the first thing you need to do is to divide your hip measurement by 2, okay? So when you divide 42 by 2, it will give you 21, okay? So how do you allocate it? Now, for the front pattern, you're going to minus 1.5 of an inch from 21 inches, okay? So to get the front pattern, you will minus 1.5 of an inch from 21 inches, okay? So now, for the back pattern, you will add 1.5 of an inch plus the 21. Do you understand? So that's the method. Divide your hip by 2, add 1.5 to the back, and minus 1.5 from the front, okay? So after doing that, now for us to get the front pattern, I will minus 1.5 from 21. It will give me 19.5, right? So for us to get the back pattern, I will add 1.5 plus 21. It will give me 22.5, right? So what I will be measuring on my paper now is because you know we're drafting the front pattern first, okay? So we've gotten the waist measurement. So the 19.5 now is what I'll be using for the hip measurement for the front pattern, okay? So what you do, you know you cannot use the full 19 because we're only drafting half of the front. Do you understand? We're not drafting the full front, okay? So because we're drafting half of the front, you would divide the 19 inches into 2. Do you understand? The 19.5 that we've gotten for the front pattern, you go ahead and divide it into 2. Whatsoever it gives you is your hip circumference, okay? So you can see what I'm doing. So now I've divided the 19.5 into 2. I will just go ahead and mark. Don't forget that it is a dartless skirt, okay? So after marking there now, the next thing I will do now, whatsoever I got on my hip measurement, I will go ahead and minus half inch from it to get the lower part, because I don't want the lower part and the upper part to be equal, okay? So I will just minus half an inch from whatsoever I got for my hip measurement. It depends on how tight you want it, okay? So you can decide to do more or you can decide not to do at all. So now after marking all the lines, I'll go ahead and connect all the lines. So connecting from the hem line to the hip line, I will connect a straight line. Then I will use my curve ruler to connect from the waistline to the hip line, which is my hip curve. So after that now, I will just blend the lines together. Then like this, we are done with the front pattern. So for the back pattern, that is where the major work is and it's quite trickish. So I will just get a fresh paper for the back pattern, I will go ahead and cut this one out. Then I will get a fresh paper for the back pattern. I'm just trying to highlight it with the tape, with the marker, because I felt like it wasn't clear enough for us to see. So that's why I'm using the marker to highlight it for us to see it properly. So the next thing now is for me to get a fresh paper. Then we'll draft the back pattern, which is the major work. So now this is my paper. This is the back pattern. I've already imputed my hip height measurement on it, and if you notice from the edge of the paper, I left about 4 inches in. Rule a straight line before imputing the hip line. Okay, so here now for the back pattern we have a total of 22.5 of an inch. So that 1.5 we added to the back from the hip line. Just measure the 1.5 from that straight line, measure the 1.5 backwards. Just connect, I'm just connecting the hip line, just connecting a straight line. Then you measure the 1.5, mark it. Okay, so after marking it, from there you will connect from your waistline to the 1.5 that you just marked. Okay, from the waistline to the 1.5. Don't forget, the straight line will rule straight down. That's where all your measurements will be starting from. Okay, so now after marking the 1.5 like this, you just connect with your ruler. So after connecting with your ruler, the next thing we'll be doing now is to get the under butt measurement. Okay, so this is the back pattern and we need the under butt measurement to be able to get an accurate work. And how I get my under butt is from my hip. Whatsoever I got from my waist to my hip, I'll minus 1 inch from it to get my under butt measurement. Here now, from my waist to my hip is 8 inches. So to get my under butt measurement, I measured 7 inches from my hip to get the under butt. Okay, so now the 1.5 now on the hip line, I'm connecting it straight to the under butt that I just marked. Okay, so if your hip height is 9 inches, you know that your under butt is 8. Okay, from the hip line. So after doing that now, the next thing we'll have to do now is to take our horizontal measurement. I will go ahead and work on the hip line. Okay, so you know it is 22.5. We are still going to be working with the 22.5. The same way we divided the 19.5 by 2 to get the front pattern, it's the same way we'll be dividing the 22.5. You can see how I'm dividing it. You divide it by 2. Whatsoever it gives you, start from the 1.5 you came in with. Okay, so just watch where I will be placing the tape very well. From the 1.5, that's where the 22.5 will be starting from. Okay, so you go ahead and mark it. So after marking it, go ahead and take your waist measurement. Whatsoever your waist circumference measurement is, you mark it. Then carry your curve ruler and connect. So you see the placement of my ruler to connect the hip line measurement together. So I'm just labeling it center back so that I don't forget, because both the front and the back, they are already carrying a curve because of the pattern we are working with. Okay, so I'm just measuring 7 inches downwards to locate the under butt so I can rule a straight line. So after that now, whatsoever we get from there now, I will go ahead and extend it to the hem of the paper, to the lower part of the paper. Okay, now don't forget that for the front pattern, whatsoever our hip measurement gave us, I minus half an inch from it. Okay, to get the lower part, to get the hem part of the paper. So it is the same thing I'm doing here. So if I had minus 1 inches from the front pattern, I will also be minusing 1 inches from the back pattern, so that my fabric, by the time I finish cutting, is going to be equal. Okay, so you take note of those little details. So you can see what I'm doing. I will minus half inch from it to get the lower parts. Okay, so now we'll just connect a straight line from the under butt to the hemline. So now that will be the side I have just connected is the side back, while this other side is the center back. So another thing you need to do is to add your zipper allowance. Normally I use 1.5 for my zipper allowance, so I'll just go ahead and mark the 1.5 all along. If you use 1 inch, just mark the 1 inch all along it, then you connect it with your ruler. So if you're connecting your zipper allowance, I will advise you to use a straight ruler to connect the zipper allowance, so that it will be able to fit properly to whatsoever it is that you're making. Okay, so don't use your curve ruler, use your straight ruler. It will give you the same, it will give you a more defined zipper allowance shape. Okay, so after connecting it like that, the front and the back pattern is ready. So one thing you have to do is label your pattern very well, because you can see that both sides of this back pattern is carrying a curve. So you just go ahead and label it, and when you're working on your fabric, make sure that you have your pattern on top of the fabric so that you don't mistake anyone for the other one. Okay, so like this now, we are done with the pattern. The front and the back is done. So the next thing you just have to do is to go ahead and cut on your fabric, cut on your lining, then you go ahead and sew the same way you sew your normal basic skirt pattern. So thank you so much for watching. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe. So this is me cutting it on my fabric. If you want to see how I made it, then stick around for my next video on the notification bell so that you'll be notified whenever I post the next video. So see you in my next video. Bye.